Welcome to New Polity's podcast on money. It's called Big Money, Fat Money, PHAT Money, and we are here today with DJ Money, who's here to tell you how to get rich or get hurt.
5 easy steps. 5 easy steps. One. Hate all your friends. Hate all your enemies too. Hate your family, and invest in Tesla.
Oh boy!
And then there's a 5 in there. I don't know. There was only 4.
All right, we're just getting warmed up here, guys. Please be gracious to us. First podcast of the morning. Jacob is. How are you feeling, Jacob?
You know what? I'm feeling kind of depressed.
Oh man, it's gonna be another one of these days. Isn't it?
Yeah. You know what? And it's just because I've been thinking about what we've been talking about, and I don't like thinking about what we've been talking about because what we've been talking about is not very nice.
No, in fact, we may have at this point lost our audience. So we're just.
It's nice to have this conversation with
man.
you. Yeah,
alone.
It's good to see you this morning. Yeah,
I guess we can get more intimate now that the audience is gone. All right, so today though we're gonna try and pick our spirits up.
Yeah,
we need a little Christmas cheer up in this place.
And you know what they used to call Christmas?
No,
Jubilees.
That's not true.
No, it's not.
Okay, but we are here to talk about Jubilees. We're going to be jubilant together, no matter how difficult it is and how much coffee I have to drink. We are going to feel jubilation in this room.
Heck yeah,
and
baby.
Our hope today is that you also have the spirit of Jubilee settle on you like a Christianized version of a Greek god.
That's our hope.
Yeah.
So this is what we're going to do, because you've heard us talk about Jubilees a little bit, and if not, well, go back and watch the one podcast that we did when we talked about just what the Jubilees were as described in Leviticus 25. We'll make sure that that's posted right before this one.
Yeah.
Drop it.
There it is.
Drop it.
Yep.
Right there it is.
Yep.
Click below. Now that, as you heard in that podcast, now that you're back from listening to that podcast, that was a system that God set up in contradistinction to the pagans, as you heard. They were the ones that were not redistributing land. They were the ones that were not attempting to buoy up the free man, but rather to enslave him and shackle him. And yet, their system is so much better than ours today, because at least they forgave some debts. And another thing.
Yeah, the hierarchy is God's method of debt forgiveness, pagan's method of debt forgiveness, and then our lack of debt forgiveness.
Right. I mean, exactly. There's just a classic thing that, the pre-Christian society was better than the post-Christian society, because in order to deconstruct Christianity, you actually have to deconstruct nature. If grace builds upon nature in some marvelous, intimate way where grace is actually infused into nature and growing out of it like yeast and bread, then to be able to destroy your theology, you got to destroy nature, and you're not going to see nature as clearly.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's what they did. They destroyed nature, and then they got rid of debt forgiveness as a result.
Oh man. All right, but we're not sad today. We're going to talk about...
Because the World Economic Forum is proposing a solution of debt forgiveness that would enslave you to big business and big government forever, so that you have to sign a pact in blood that you never own anything ever again. There's hope for a better Jubilee.
Totally. I mean, World Economic Forum, forget it.
Yeah.
WEF.
What the WEF?
No one even knows what that means.
Nobody knows what they... No, I got some criticism for saying things against the WEF. I'm not saying this along the lines of culture of vegano, pro-capitalist, pro-Trump stuff. And if anybody's ever listened to me speak before,
let's go down
that's clearly not the case.
Let's go down that rabbit hole.
Are we going to?
I'll be the vegano guy.
Okay, you do it.
Trump is just an angel. And no, we're not doing it. Let's keep moving. All right, we're feeling jubilant today, and we want to talk about debt forgiveness, right? Which is a mandate that comes right from the Old Testament. It doesn't go away in the New Testament. Quite the contrary. It becomes part of the very essence of Christianity. When Jesus Christ tells us to pray, he asks us we ask God to forgive our debts as we forgive others.
Yeah.
Incredible. It's something we pray every day, or we should be praying every day. God help me.
I bet you pray it every day.
No, man. Thanks for thinking that. I hope that's true. So debt forgiveness is not just limited to kind of actual monetary debts, but it really becomes a way of life. A Christian is that kind of person who wakes up in the morning and says, I have to forgive debts. That's a different way of living. It's a wonderful way of living. It's a jubilant, literally jubilant way of living. And so we're here to discuss it a little more. Now, do you think that they're ready to jump into it? Or
Yeah, sure,
okay.
why not? I mean, it starts off, I just want to say, because that was just so beautiful, and I just want to keep the beauty going.
Jacob.
You know that marvelous parable that Jesus tells where the wealthy man comes and he says, all right, I gotta get all my debtors here to give me what is owed.
Yep.
And like that one guy owed like $5 billion in modern currency. Probably now it's like $8 billion in modern currency. And he forgives the debt. And then that same the same debtor who had owed all this much goes to a guy that owed him very, very little. And he says, no, I'm going to throw you in jail if you don't pay this back. That is exactly where we are today with Christ, who forgives us so freely and so gratuitously that we need to go around and forgive debts as well.
Yeah.
And of course, as you've mentioned before, that this analogy to the forgiveness of sin only works if it is also applied to the forgiveness of money debts.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good methodological point. The historical sense of Scripture. So like the really literal, like
first of the four senses of Scripture.
Yeah.
Learn this.
It's not the case that you ignore the historic sense. So you couldn't make an argument that says, oh, Jesus says forgive our debts, and he makes this a spiritual reality, so we are now negating the literal reality with which the thing that he's using to have the metaphor. No. A medieval would jump through a beautiful stained glass window if he heard you say that. In fact, the historical is what grounds all subsequent senses of Scripture. And so you have to say, because Christ uses real debt forgiveness as the foundation of his metaphor for a debt forgiveness that comes from above and which includes every evil act we've ever committed, then we have to take seriously the literal ground that he's standing on.
He instituted it literally in the Old Testament.
Yeah, I mean, same guy, actually.
It's the same God. Yeah. and it's a really, now obviously it's terribly important to just realize that when Christ became incarnate and fleshed, he didn't become in flesh to tell us ignore the flesh or ignore the spirituality, or ignore the physicality of this life. I mean, this is the way in which we commune with one another. It's part of the reason why death is so horrible, is that all of a sudden the medium through which we commune with one another is stripped from us, taken from us.
Yeah.
So anyways,
jubilance.
We're getting happy again.
Well, I want to say this before we go on. Not having debt forgiveness as a part of our culture is a theological problem primarily, and most people won't discuss it. They talk it about it as a material problem, which it is obviously, but we just don't think there's any distinction really between the material and the theological, so it becomes difficult. But the state, the leadership, rule, governance, authority is always, whether it would be or not, an image of God, right? I mean, this is just what it means. That's why when God reveals himself, he reveals himself in the image of authorities that we are already looking at as Father, right? As King. So when the state doesn't forgive debts, and not just the state, but when any authority strips debt forgiveness from part of its life, right? So that we don't understand it as belonging to it properly, then we get a false image of God. We get an image of God, our human image of God becomes distorted. We start to believe that God himself is stingy in his forgiveness. Yeah, and I think this really afflicts nations in a real level, that they don't have the lived kind of example of godliness that allows them to say, wow, God has forgiven me. Like, we say it so often that, it becomes kind of rote, like, oh yeah, we all know that God forgives us. But I don't know if we really do, because those examples they're not superfluous, right? You can't just be like, well, fathers don't forgive, authorities don't forgive, governors don't forgive, mayors don't forgive, presidents don't forgive, banks don't
deep in your
forgive.
bones. I hear that a lot. People kind of telling them or saying in moments of kind of existential crisis or whatever that I don't really believe that God loves me or God forgives me, and it's because they've never seen that type of authority stooping down to embrace,
Right.
you
And
know?
to really actually obliterate debt
Yeah.
instead of doing some kind of technique by which debt remains. But there's like a shifting of money, which
Right.
is sort of what we usually do. Like when
Yeah.
Biden says that he'll give the banks a bailout for student debt.
Oh my gosh, it's
But we want
so
Joseph
frustrating.
Biden to fulfill his destiny as being an image of God. And, you know, maybe if he listens to this, then he can become jubilant. And in doing so,
And
show us Christ.
yeah,
Yeah.
Joe,
C'est
this one's for you.
C'est possible. Eh?
So, but
right.
we want to say that we don't even have to depend upon other people for having our personal jubilees.
That's right. It starts here.
It doesn't start with the World Economic Forum. It starts in
Forget
your
'em.
hometown.
You're doing the
In
Biden.
your
Stop it.
home.
You're doing the Biden thing again.
Well, we're talking about it.
I know, but you need to kind of casually look away from the camera. It's way more effective. Okay, you don't do things casually, like period. All right, go ahead.
Well, the idea is that we've talked about when your friend is in need, you give him a loan, and then here's the personal jubilee. This is where it kicks in. You forgive the loan.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't pay you back.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about how we can institute this more in our personal lives. Like, how can you actually live out jubilees more and more? And obviously, that's kind of an easy one. It might be hard to conceptualize. People don't really ask you for money. Maybe you're not the type of person where people would be like thinking that you would like give them money. That needs to change too.
Yeah, just move to a smaller town. And
Yeah,
people
yeah, exactly.
will absolutely think you have money.
And then just forgive debts. But there also needs to be a way in which there's people get liturgically formed into realizing the great gift of debt forgiveness, seeing it more often, forgiving debts and being forgiven of debts in a real way.
And you know,
And Marc had a great idea of how to institute this.
Did I shoot? Don't what? Okay.
So this is the idea.
Yeah.
that Marc had. Marc lives across the street.
Oh, I know it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. This is my idea. I had a great idea. It's pretty simple. Now, this is a bit silly, but it goes to what Jacob says. It's a way of actually having debt forgiveness as a conscious possibility, right? So it's kind of a building block that would enable furthermore, say, substantial debt forgiveness to really happen. So the idea is pretty simple. It's kind of propaganda as well. It kind of just gets the message out there. I live across the street from an empty lot. What I'd like to do is buy the lot somehow and turn it into a park. Okay, a really beautiful park. I want a conservatory in there with trees that are growing lemons and mangoes in the winter. I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I want. Wow. I would like a little pond.
That's magical.
With koi and a little bridge, like in Monet's paintings. I would like a tall wooden play structure that Montessori children can learn on, work on. That's what I want. But then what I want to do is I want to put a fence around it with a little gate. The gate's always open, and there's a sign next to the gate, and it says cost of entry $30. Okay. Now, I never.
Why $30?
I don't know.
Because it's just enough where it'd be like, that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the reason.
Now, there is no enforcement, right? It's my park, technically. It's God's park. But when people walk through, they accrue a debt.
Mm.
Now, like most debt, what's fascinating about it is that nothing really happens. Nothing really changes. And this in itself, I think, is an important recognition because we don't deal with wealth anymore. We don't deal with actually giving things and receiving things that matter. We don't deal with productive property. We rarely even deal with cash, much less precious metals or anything backed by precious metals or anything like that. We deal in fiat currency, as Jacob is teaching me to say. And we deal with like these digital debts, right? That just like suddenly I am in debt. What does that mean? Well, I feel obligation, and technically the power of the state could ultimately be utilized against me, and no one would bat an eye, right? I mean, that's what debt is.
Yeah.
Okay. So you let people accrue debt. It's just another place where they do that. You do it all the time. You do it by living, essentially, by getting taxed. Then you have a Jubilee. So you let those debts accrue, and you don't need to charge anyone. You don't need to coerce anyone. You don't even need to remind anyone that there's a debt. You just kind of keep the sign on the door. And then once a year, it could be once every 7 years, but I think we need like catechesis. Yeah. I mean, we got a lot to catch up on.
I was thinking 6 months.
Yeah, sure. We have a big festival in the park. It's a huge party where we have a list of the debtors. Okay. I don't actually know who they are, so it will be very theatrical because I'm not checking in on who goes through the gate to use the park. And a lot of this will just be my friends too, I presume, like at first. So then we have the list, and then we have a big festival. We bring a band out, a lot of really good music. Bring out a hot dog stand. We got a pretty good hot dog guy here.
Oh, we have an amazing hot dog guy.
We drink, we dance, we become very merry, jubilant. And once we're really jubilant, we set the list on fire.
Set the list on fire.
We burn it, and then we all sing a hymn. I think maybe "Praise God, to whom all blessings flow." I think from whom all blessings flow. I think that would be a really good hymn to sing. Okay, yeah, I get it. I'm a romantic, and frankly, that's fine. But
just look at your scarf.
Yeah, this is my money scarf. This is the proof that the podcast is working. Just getting wealthier and wealthier.
Hand me down.
So what you have there is silly, but it is a sacramental reminder that debts can be forgiven. So the point is pedagogical, catechetical. I want people to experience the forgiveness of debts, right? Even if undoubtedly they'll kind of know already that the forgiveness is coming. But this is the point. A practiced Jubilee is really interesting. Like, it means that everyone in the society that practices a Jubilee lives under the consciousness of their debts being forgiven and of, what you're owed. Ultimately, you have to forgive, which means that all of your actions will change, right? Because you can't say, okay, I'm going to amass a whole bunch of land beyond my ability to use it, because it's going to go back. I mean, this is not our system. I'm just saying within the Israelite system, like you can't simply say, okay, the way I'm going to make my livelihood is by putting as many people into the service sector as possible. They're going to be working for me, and I'm going to be extracting the surplus value of their labor. Like, you can try to do that for a time, and then your system will come crumbling down around you, and you will have nothing. And you'll be worse than if you had spent that time and energy actually trying to produce, have productive property and produce for your own family. And so that, my point is, like, having a lived experience of debt forgiveness should be the kind of thing that gives us a consciousness of how to live in this world. Now, this is a really small way and admittedly kind of flamboyant, but that's what I want to do.
I like that
to have
idea.
a personal Jubilee.
Yeah, I like the idea a lot. I would, another thing that I was thinking of, and this is not romantic, and it's perhaps more eccentric than you would say flamboyant.
Okay.
But they're very close.
Yeah.
I don't even sure like how you'd really, flamboyant is more about just like feathers.
It's the way you move your wrists, actually. Eccentric versus flamboyant. So what's your idea? What's your eccentric idea?
So the idea is, okay, so if you want to found your own bank, you need about $3 million to do so.
Okay. Tracking so far.
Okay, it's a credit union.
What is a credit union?
A credit union is a group of people that put their money in a pot so that they can be able to give loans out to the fellow people in their community.
Nice.
So that they could buy unproductive property.
Like George Bailey.
Like George Bailey.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, though. This is sneaky, and this might be like actually participating in sin in some way. So it's juicy.
I'm gonna I'll try and check you.
Check me out on this. Today, because of our crazy laws, we have the ability to participate in fractional reserve banking, which means that you get to multiply your money out.
Okay.
So for every dollar that you have in the bank, you get to say you have 8 more.
Do you actually have 8 more?
No, it's a lie.
Weird.
But you're allowed to do that.
Why would you do that?
So that you can loan money out at interest to get more money back.
Gotcha.
So we wouldn't do the interest part.
Sure.
We would just loan money out. But
you can loan out money you don't have?
Yeah.
Are you freaking kidding me?
No. This is what every bank does.
Well, why is it so hard to get a loan then? Just say there's more money and give it to me.
Well, they want to make sure that it's productive for them. Even if it's unproductive for you.
I see. Okay, so keep
going.
going.
And it's not that hard to get a loan. I mean, especially this is like one of the big problems in 2008 crisis is that they were just giving loans out left and right because there was more kind of financial magic that they were doing in the background that we can talk about sometime, which is really interesting and I like it a lot. But they're going to hell for doing it.
Right.
This idea though is that if you have $3 million to found your own credit union, you automatically have $24 million.
Did you guys know this? Does everyone know this?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
They do now.
So, okay.
And actually, I think that rate has gone up since this most recent stimulus.
So it's a gamble in the sense of like
it might actually be 27 million.
But isn't the whole system based? I mean, like I am totally just learning this, but wouldn't it be based on the assumption that you're going to get all of that pretend money to become real money by charging interest?
Yeah, well, no, not actually.
So what makes the pretend money real?
That we think that it's real.
Okay, so it's real money.
It's categorized differently. So there's basic money and broad money.
Oh man.
Yeah, there's like a whole chart thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
we can talk about.
All right, but maybe that's not the point. Okay, so
it's not the point.
Point is that with a measly sum of $3 million,
actually, let me just say this really carefully. This is not complicated. This is not hard. If you think this is mysterious and difficult and just so complex that it's over your head, it's not. Just think about it like this: give $1 to the bank, and then they just say they have more than that dollar. It's not mysterious. It's not magic.
Okay,
we just think that it is because we all worship money.
No, maybe. Alternative, more jubilant interpretation is that we think it's magic because when you hear something so patently unjust, or at least patently not in accord with how reality works, you presume that you're missing something rather than it actually
you're
being
not missing anything.
Stupid.
You are a smart individual.
Okay. See, but I think it's more of a humility thing. This is a positive take today.
I like it.
People generally are humble. So someone comes and says, did you know that when you give $1 to a bank, they just pretend they have more money than they do, and you think it must be something I'm missing because that sounds stupid.
Yeah. You're not missing anything. It really was based upon this early principle, this early idea that when banks were holding gold, people were not coming back for their gold all that often. They literally were just using the bank as a storehouse.
Yeah.
And so the banks were able to, lend out some of that gold that people weren't using, and they figured out what was the right proportions of giving it out versus a time when the true owners were coming back for it. And so they were able to say they had more physical gold than they do. Now that there's money is not physical really, except for the dollars and bills that we have. Yeah. It's a little bit easier, especially since you can just print more. Right. But that's a digression.
Point is, if you put 3 million, you have actually 24 million.
Yeah, maybe 27 million. I haven't looked up if they actually they change it for bigger banks. I'm not sure about smaller banks. Yeah. But anyways, you have you have 27 million all of a sudden.
Yep. That's cool.
At that point, you can just use that money to pay off your friends' houses. Mm-hmm. And some of them, they might pay you back, it is very slowly, non-interest rates. Others of them might just fail, and then you just say to them, don't worry about it. And so that $3 million will go away because that money has to go somewhere. Like the actual $3 million that you go is going somewhere.
Wow.
But because you've multiplied it out
Yeah.
at such a large rate, more people are going to have homes,
Yeah.
and the bank will fail.
Yes.
if not enough people are bringing more money back to it.
Right.
Um,
So this would, okay, so sorry, let's just walk through this slowly.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
dense. So you've got 27 million magic dollars.
Yep.
And I come with my loan, my mortgage, and like that I
You-
already owe.
Let's make it easier.
Okay.
You want to buy a house.
I want to buy a house. Okay. So I come to you, this bank for a loan.
Yeah.
Okay. And they give me a loan.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I buy the house, and now the difference is I am literally paying the bank back. I am not paying interest.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next podcast
Yes.
about interest rates, but yeah,
Okay.
pretty much.
Okay. So already that rocks.
Yeah.
And then if I am not able
Mm-hmm.
to pay the bank back,
Mm-hmm.
it's forgiven.
Yeah.
Wow, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Well, but what about, like, wouldn't people just want to take advantage of this? Like, wouldn't people go to you for loans with no intention of ever paying it back?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things that people often, say when they're reading Leviticus is like, well, if these are just going to be forgiven, then won't people actually just take advantage of the loaners, or won't the people who give loans not actually give loans anymore? And there's a couple different things to think about here. Is that loans really need to go to people who need them.
Mm-hmm.
First of all. Second, this is part of the reason why Jubilees were regular in ancient Israel, is that you could actually make decisions of loans based upon how close to the Jubilee you were.
Sure.
So it was really based upon need, and it was really based upon what you could do with the property you were giving or getting until those 50 years are up.
Sure.
So God even says that you are paying for the use of the land, and that is recorded from the time based upon the last Jubilee.
So
the answer to your question in this situation is, well, this is a very expensive and another kind of eccentric way of catechizing people into debt forgiveness. But two, it also really needs to be in a community of trust.
I was going to say,
like where people are saying, hey, we really want this bank to work because it will do good things.
Right, because that was going to say, it's like, just to jump on your idea as if I understand it all. The kind of presumption when we take loans today is that the people that give us the money are doing no good. They're in fact evil. They don't care about us in particular. And if they were to kill us for getting their money back, they would, rather than forgive debts. And we're generally, I think, right in those assumptions. And so our relationship to the banks, or just people that loan, is one of raw animosity,
right? Yeah.
Which is basically what you see, I think. Ask anyone about how they feel about their student loan provider. But what you're saying is, like, if it was limited, like extremely limited in scope, like it is this community that's being served and not another, and if the application process was such that it was orientated to those with the greatest need, right, and there was an understanding, a communal understanding, that if we do pay back our loans, right, then the community as a whole will benefit more from this bank doing what it does than if we don't pay back our loans.
Yeah.
So it actually thrives on a recognition of the common good by its participants. And it wouldn't, if people just pursued their self-interest, if like they weren't converted, it wouldn't do evil, it would do good. It would just do much less good than it could, because that's that's $27 million that's being translated into real ownership and saving people from slavery to power that isn't involved and doesn't care, like in a real sense, about their particular community.
Right.
You get rid of those kinds of loans.
Right. Absolutely.
So there's a good there, but the pitch constantly, the catechesis, is how much more good could we do if you obey what the Bible says, which is pay back your loans.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the thing, is that when whoever would give the $3 million for this new venture they would not like it's a productive investment
Yeah.
and not an unproductive investment. So think about the difference between starting a new business versus buying a house. It's like you're going to buy a house with a loan or with a whole bunch of money, and then you might not pay it off. The bank might seize it from you, but in any case, even if you do succeed and you do pay it off, then it's just going to cost you more money because it's a house.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to fix it all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas with with a productive loan, with starting a business, say you want to start, Icy's ice cream shop or something like that. At that point, if it fails, it just fails. You don't owe anybody anything at that point. And if it succeeds, then you get money, not lose more money.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an important difference that the scriptures itself makes.
Gotcha.
And even the medievals itself makes on the difference between what you can charge interest on.
I see.
But for this venture, this is starting a new bank venture. It's kind of funny because it involves both, because it itself is a productive, like a potentially productive business where you would have somebody who would have a job in managing this bank.
Yeah.
On the others, and it gets. I wish we had done the interest conversation before this because I could refer to that.
But we could.
We'll do things.
You thought the sovereign was the only one that could control space and time through his magic.
We just changed it, and you just went back and you listened to our interest rate podcast, and now this makes so much sense because you have the ability to charge just enough where you keep the bank solvent.
Yeah.
Then it is itself a productive loan.
Okay.
Or it's a productive venture, not a productive loan. And it gives out unproductive loans for people to buy homes. Yeah. We could have a venture firm version of this, which would be cool, but that would be a completely different example. And anyways, this is getting too complicated, but all to say that this would be a manner in which you would actually not only be able to get homes and people in homes, but actually it would be changing the economic temperature of a community by virtue of changing their disposition towards money making.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, I think if you lived in a community which knew itself as one of debt forgiveness, lack of usury, a drive towards ownership, and gift, you would be different.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, look, like one of the things that people often critique any kind of post-liberal vision is they say things like, okay, you want this Christian state, you want this Christian society, you want this like, it's kind of idyllic. What if there's someone that doesn't want it living with you? And it's a tough question because what liberalism is predicated on is the idea that there is no need for genuine community or virtue, that we can all pursue our individual self-interest, and then by the state having a monopoly on violence, we're kept from killing each other in this process. That's not what Christianity teaches. So when we say things like this requires a community, right, that's orientated towards its common good, we're not like, we're saying that it is not sin-proof. In fact, it is precisely the air of liberalism to say there are spaces that are sin-proof, that you can have greed, but through the market, that greed won't actually hurt people. You can have vanity and ambition and pride, but through the neutral political sort of operations, all of these things will be held in checks and balances, and what you will get is good governance.
Yeah, John Maynard Keynes says this at one point. He says, for the last century, we've been pretending that foul is fair and fair is foul, because fair is unhelpful and foul is productive. And so we need to worship these gods for another century and pretend and continue this lie. He's one of these few honest guys that actually says that. Wow. That the traditional morality is being inverted.
Right.
I wanted one other idea. So we've kind of talked about like a small neighborhood idea. We've talked about like a city idea. Yeah. But of course, the understanding of a politics begins in the home.
Yeah, with the family.
And you find, and it's kind of interesting, is that within some scholastics, you find that they say, well, politics really only begins when you have multiple families collaborating together.
Yeah.
And what you have in the home is just an economy.
Yeah.
It's household management,
Yeah.
which means that jubilees can start in the home.
Right.
And maybe that's the first way that we habituate ourselves towards forgiving debts and then expanding from there.
Yeah.
Because you need to have families that know debt forgiveness
Yeah.
deep in their bones, have experienced,
Yeah.
lived it, and trust it
Yeah.
before they trust it outside of those homes.
Absolutely.
And then the neighborhood thing could work, and then the city thing could work.
Yeah.
So, what's an idea of forgiving debts?
I mean, one of the, this is sort of it's not a cheap answer. It's not going to sound very creative. It's just that we are already supposed to forgive debts. We're supposed to forgive each other, our sins against each other. And I think that that's the fundamental place where you start. Like your kids, I mean, my kid is very small. I don't know if he's committed an actual sin yet. But theoretically, he probably will sin. I mean, I'm not saying for sure.
I give him a 90% chance,
Okay.
but there's this,
that forgiveness, right, it should never be presumed that people know when they're forgiven. So, I mean, I've seen this in parents sometimes where, and not just parents, friendships, in sibling relationships, where forgiveness isn't necessarily spoken, because what we do, because we are depraved, is that we use the opportunity of saying "I forgive you" as a way of saying you sinned.
Yeah.
You see this all the time where it's like someone pisses you off and you just like, I just want to say that, like, I forgive you for what you just did to me. And like, it's not forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right. It's like an attack.
Mhm.
It's like, I just want to say that, like, I hate you. But so it's hard, right? It's hard to say that, but I think if you start at a young age, you can take away that kind of cynicism that comes with trying to like just jump on it. Which is to say, like, when there is sin in the family, that you tell your children that, once they've understood that they've done wrong and they've repented and there's penance and it's, the domestic church is all at work, you really get down on your knees and say, I forgive you, and make it an event, make it something that the child is educated to know that forgiveness comes from above, that they expect it, and that it's jubilant. And this is the thing. This is how you get rid of that kind of like, I forgive you as a furthering of the punishment, right?
Yeah.
That it immediately is, it's a cause of celebration within your family. So it's like you hug your kid and you tell them how much you love them. You immediately follow the forgiveness with signs of the renewed and restored relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like immediately go do something fun together, or like, so that it doesn't become this like, I forgive you, you little jerk, so like really basic stuff, super hobbity.
Yeah,
but I think
that's
absolutely
just a
crucial.
good way of
Absolutely. If you can't
cultivating
forgive
that.
your kids, or then you're never going to be able to forgive the guy you loan $20 to. And eventually that's your kid too. So
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah. And you know who actually does that pretty well? So Andrew Jones, like he's a pretty smart guy, but he's actually like a really good guy too. People don't know that. Like he's actually a really, really amazing guy.
Yeah.
And he'll actually go to his kids. I've seen him do it so many times actually, and he'll genuinely get down and ask for their forgiveness too, so that they are then practicing debt forgiveness in a way where it's not just always a kid messing up and
Yes.
such. And then it's hug, rejoice, so that their habituation is towards, unity with their parents, instead of like, I hate you, Dad, and because it's always to see the humility of the higher coming to the lower, and those moments are
it's super profound.
tear jerking.
Yeah, no, I've seen it too.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then I was also thinking, like, there is, whenever you really decide to live in one place, everyone knows this. I mean, it's the joke about small towns is that, they're just like bristling with hidden resentments and animosities from 30 years back, and nothing's ever forgotten ever. Um, and I think there's a truth to that, because you can't just, when you're in a smaller community, or when you have some kind of intentional community, you can't just walk away from the effects of sin. Like, you can't just let it sort of dissolve into so many people that you never see the person that you've offended or that's offended you.
Mm.
And you also can't,
Yeah, it's a great point.
right. And you also have to work with people, right? It's sort of like akin to a workplace. It's like, if you harbor resentment and grudges, which seems to be the backbone of the American workplace, then you still have to deal with that person, and it is constantly in your face, right? That there is a debt that needs to be repaid or forgiven. Um, and so I think that extending that jubilant sense to those who've offended us by inviting them to feasts, I think is really important. And I think you already see this. So a lot of this stuff sounds like we're like reinventing humanity. This already happens. It happens, I dare say, even naturally. Um, and so I'm not saying like this is some novel thing. Like we've all experienced this, where it's like you're pissed off at whatever relative, and then Christmas comes, and you're like, you are given the grace to just take the guy aside and be like, look, man, like, I love you. I'm happy that you're part of my family. And I'm sorry for all that stuff, or I'm over all that, or, whatever, like, muttery American way you need to say the words, I forgive you. Like, but I think being intentional about that as a family, again, as long as you avoid that kind of weird Nietzschean will to power stuff, whereby dinner is a power play and forgiveness is a power play. And yeah, I hate that. It's easier to trip into, though, I think, than people think.
Yeah.
But you tell your children and your family, and, I don't presume that your family is just you and your children, like whoever's involved in the household, you make it clear what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like whether it's we are inviting people who we owe, or we are inviting people who owe us, right? Who've offended us, or maybe who actually owe us. Like, that's also the case. And then celebrate their existence. I mean, something my mom would always say to me is like, if you ever hate someone, like if you ever dislike someone, you have to ask yourself the question, like, do I want them to be in hell? Because that's sort of what the Christian has to kind of face up to in the end, is like, is my grudge, is my lack of forgiveness unto eternity? And if it is unto eternity, what does it mean? It means I don't want to see you in heaven. And then there's only one other place for them, right?
Yep.
Which is, again, this is like actually probably a pretty good way of describing it to kids. Like, you are going to feast with all these people, right? So do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just have a big dinner party, have like 3 or 4 courses, get a lot of, drink is important, I think, in debt forgiveness,
especially for kids.
Yeah. And, do it regularly and do it intentionally. I think when you find even a small community of believers, I think, the meal is elevated to its proper status, its naturally proper status as, Thanksgiving. And to have forgiveness within the Eucharist is, of course, already our liturgical structure, confession, and then communion. And it should be, I think, the same in the domestic church. There is the forgiveness of sins. There's the feasting. Yeah. So those are 2, 3, 4.
Whoa.
4 personal Jubilee things. I think these are good. Let's just end with a couple more practical ones. Like, just actually forgive debts, which you sort of mentioned.
Yeah.
But that also requires that
you loans.
Give loans. Yeah. So like, loan people money. Try to like, it's awkward, right? No one wants to ask for money, generally speaking, unless they're already really sure they're going to get it, or if it's an anonymous institution like a bank. But when you hear people in need, and if you have anything, $20, say, oh, I'll loan you $20, and then forgive them.
Yeah.
Right. Try and try to actually intentionally work so that moments of forgiveness are
Yeah.
possible.
Offer money often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is different
Yeah.
than saying give alms, right? Because while that is important, you should. It's not simply it's not enough to simply have those penitential moments where you say, all right, I'm going to give you money with no expectation of return.
Yeah.
What we're trying to build up is a community that actually understands forgiveness as part of its life. And so when you give, expect in return. Like
Yeah.
let that be the relationship established, and then forgive it.
Yeah.
Right?
Take time doing that. And yeah, there's I think I heard quite a bit is that it's always awkward. You don't want to bring money in between friendships
Yeah.
and such.
Sure.
Oh man, the reason why is because you can't actually quantify these things. Like and people often think that they deserve more or that they're worth more, and they put their worth in a number, which is just literally impossible to do. It's kind of getting back to that commensurating incommensurables thing. And then you start to squabble over it, and you really find that your true self-worth is in your religion, which is monetary. So this is actually also a good rehab, and I had to go through this actually. First time I started, money is just being able to say, okay, this is really doesn't matter. Like this is not my religion. The systems of the world, won't break down. Like the true systems of the world, the way that God created natural order, like won't break down if that money doesn't get returned.
Yeah.
It's okay, and it was just like, it was so funny. It was like I had to like talk to myself like I was a child, like it's okay, don't worry about it, like there's something else here, you're converting, and that's gosh, the freedom with that, the real freedom with that. And now it's just, we might have money between friends, and it is no problem at all, because we are operating according to the order of love rather than the order of money. And we know that it is not money that will help us in the end, but our friends.
Yeah, and that yes, absolutely, and that leads to another question. When you ask for money, do like an Israelite do and ask your friends and family.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. Ask your friends and family first.
Just don't go to the pagans, man. The pagans,
they suck.
They kind of do in this regard. Yeah. I mean, they're destined to be a part of the church, but insofar as they're not yet, they tend to say things like, give me back my money. And that's
just
it.
Harshly.
Yeah, totally. So like if you have the opportunity to
and
ask,
with extra, and and that was also something kind of interesting. Like one guy was like, I'll I think one guy was doing this to you for a while. I was like, I'm gonna give you, I'll promise I'll give you this amount more.
Yeah, and I had to tell him at some point. I was like, look, because the thing was, he's actually, like, it's not a gimmick of like getting money. He always pays me back. Whenever I loan him money. And I told him, look, I just had to be really clear. Like, I don't want to sin. If I give you money and then charge you interest for it, it's a sin.
Yeah.
If I sin, I will go to hell. So I need you to stop
promising me. And cost tentationem, bro.
So I was like, please, because he is Catholic, so he had a sense of this. I was like, please, like, help me.
Yeah.
By not offering to give interest.
Yeah.
And I mean, he thought about this a little bit, and he's like, he had some joke, I forget, but I mean, he's interesting because he'll borrow from banks, and then he'll borrow on the street. And if he borrows on the street, he knows that that's where the real heavy interest comes. Yeah. Because it's followed up with threats of violence pretty quickly. Yeah. Whereas the state takes a while to operate. Yeah. This is the nice thing about the Leviathan, is it's sort of big.
Yeah. Juggernaut of sorts. Yeah.
So anyway, so it's not just about forgiving debt; it's also about asking for money, asking for loans from people who will forgive your debts and who have that. I mean, we talked about this with the Jubilees. Like, God said, go to your family first, because there's actually a will to forgive. Yeah. And if there's not, and paganism has sort of infested the family, look to other communities, look to intentional communities, look to your parish friends. It's tough because we speak in a way, again, like this doesn't happen in a vacuum. Like you very well may be and probably are in a situation where there aren't real Christians around you,
Mm.
where even the Christians, self-proclaimed, have usurious habits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's tough.
The majority of us do in the States. And, just like the last practical thing that we'll kind of mention is like move out of DC.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
We'll help you find a house here in Steubenville.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
All right.
Hey, good job. Thanks for listening to us on I hope it was jubilant for you.
Yeah.
Because I felt like there were some jubilant moments here.
I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happier than when we began.
Okay, good.
That's
All right.
good. All right.
Well, we'll see you next time, guys.